Welcome to the Funnel Reboot Podcast with your host, Glenn Schmeltzley. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot, whether you're here for the first time or the 189th time. Welcome to the show for analytically minded marketers. Let's get straight into today's show. My sister-in-law, Janice, works at the forefront of the field, medical sonography. You may know it by the name ultrasound, where non-invasive sound waves are sent into a body, they bounce off tissue, and that gets displayed on a monitor. This has the ability to evaluate anatomy in an increasingly wide range of structures. It can look at abdominal organs, the heart, vasculature, muscles in patients of all ages. And of course, we commonly see it used in obstetrical ultrasound. Now, in the past 35 years, ultrasound has changed from a tool that was used solely by radiology to now be expanded into being used by almost every medical discipline. Cardiology, emergency medicine, anesthesia, nursing, physio, and more. Training these non-traditional users on ultrasound has a huge boon. Now ultrasound is being taught in the first year of med schools because no matter what type of medicine one chooses, ultrasound can play a part. Now Janice and others like her have shared their love and knowledge of ultrasound to help and aid this expansion of ultrasound into new realms all around healthcare. Why am I talking about this? Well, in a similar way to be better marketers or developers or website owners, we have aspects of web behavior that we need surfaced. Specific user conversions, page views, scrolls, and many other interactions. These aren't visible to an analytics tool out of the box. We have to take equipment and configure it to highlight them. And that's done with tags. Tags that fire and alert our analytics software of those specific interactions. The same way that medical monitors will show the echoes of specific sonar frequencies. Tags have evolved. They've gone right onto our sites and they're now being operated by whole tag management systems. The most common one being Google Tag Manager. Without these tagging tools, our visibility into a site's performance would be limited the same way that doctors before ultrasound couldn't see what was going on inside their patients. Another similarity these tools share is that they both come with ethical and safety considerations, and laws covering user privacy and data protection. Gathering insights, whether by ultrasound or tagging, must respect the digital autonomy and the privacy of users. We have a guest to take us through all facets of tag management. And I hope that after hearing him, you won't think of tagging as just some machine that should be relegated to technicians, but instead a tool that you can use on the front lines as something that you yourself should get hands-on with. Originally from Brazil, our guest, Ricardo Cristofolini's analytics journey began when he arrived in Canada in 2015, and he studied at Algonquin College, earning an Ontario College Diploma in Computer Programming. There, he had the opportunity to put together some professional knowledge with areas such as web and app development and cloud computing. Transitioning to the workforce, he served in web development, in digital marketing, and WordPress development roles. These kindled his love for analytics and data tracking, and ever since, he's worked at analytics firms such as Bounteous and at Napkin, which is part of Kepler Group, where he is a senior implementation specialist. He loves reading and writing about analytics and has earned a badge from LinkedIn as a top web analytics voice. Ricardo loves supporting others in the field by answering questions and providing guidance. We're going to go down to Ottawa, Canada to speak with Ricardo Cristofolini. Ricardo, so glad to have you on Funnel Reboot. Welcome to the show.
Nice. Yes. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited to see everything that we're going to explore today.
Yeah, we are going to explore a fair bit. And I suppose the core topic that we're going to get to is what has been happening in our ability to tag all of the things that we want to track on our websites. Um, just start by telling me a little bit about what tools you're used to using to do that.
Yeah, so I use a variety in terms of management tag management tool. Mainly Google Tag Manager. That's my main tool when I need to work and have like probably 80%, 90% of my clients use that one as well. I've been touching a little bit on Tillian as well and Citon just here and there. But yeah, Google Tag Manager is the main one, client side and server side. So there's this two out there tools that we can use. So I've been using that one.
Great. And I'm sure a lot of people know Google Tag Manager. The setup happens there. Where are you used to going for extracting the information of tags that fired?
So that one when tags to fire just go, like into the website first. We need to start when it comes to the website because all the information comes from there, right? So we have to
Yep.
start with a robust, set of data, which is, probably people out there know it's the data layer, famous. I like to touch that a lot because it's where all the data comes from. Based on the data layer, if you have a good and robust structure for that one, the rest just fits in. So you go into Tag Manager, you start working with the tags, triggers, variables, templates. If you're going into GTM 360, you have zones. There's a lot of things to explore, but that's where I like to start. So Tag Manager to start dealing with like extracting the information and firing the tags and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've said a whole mouthful there. The part that I'd love us to kind of get into a little bit more is understanding how this data layer is simply it's a way to kind of pass over the information, and we can definitely spend our time in there when we want to debug. But the real point of it, correct me if I'm wrong, is to simply find a way to pass information. And we want to pass as much information as privacy will allow, but also as much information as will help ourselves or our clients understand really what all of the actions that the visitor is taking mean, right?
Yes, that's right. And that's something important to know when you touch in terms of privacy. It goes like basically against the fact that we need to understand what's happening in a website, what users are doing, and where they're going, where they're coming from. So we know, like of course, in the future we can, among other things, we're targeting them. But then comes the privacy, and then the privacy is something that can really stop this whole understanding of what is happening. Interesting enough, I had a case like a recent case of a
Hmm.
client that was complaining that hey, like I see people coming to my website, but then the information that I'm tracking is just like halfway through. I don't have the whole information, and they were complaining about that. And I was like, well, do you have consent mode? Yes, we do have consent mode. So basically, you can't really track if a user comes to a website, start poking around, and don't really consent. You're probably not going to have that information. So you have half of the stuff going in there.
Right. And I mean, this is interesting. I suppose we should take a moment to talk about this. And I think our North American listeners will probably be the ones most interested. Um, the premise of something like Google Tag Manager is that information can be passed unless the user uh, doesn't give consent. And for those who want to kind of flip over to more of a, I'll call it an EU model, where they can explicitly tell their tag management solution not to pass this information, we have consent mode. Would you put it any differently, or is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so like the consent mode, it's one way to deal. Like I would say there are like a couple ways that you can deal with that passing information. When we look at the consent mode, I've been reading that some people say, well, you're actually, if a user do not consent to be tracked, data is still going somewhere, maybe going like to Google servers, but they don't go to the UI, to G4, to Universal Analytics. And that some clients that I had kind of like concern about that one, like, okay, we're still collecting data, not we in terms of the client itself, but Google itself still collecting data. And some people kind of complain about that, or just say, well, I don't want any data to be tracked or collect, or to be passed. I don't want Google, I don't want you, I don't want analytics, anyone. I had a couple of clients in terms of that one as well, and that's where we come up with a solution in terms of firing the snippet of Tag Manager. When you implement Tag Manager website, you have the snippet. So in order to avoid 100% of tracking, we took a step back and we thought about, okay, we don't want fire Tag Manager at all, because even if the user consent, no, I don't want that. Before that, sometimes you may have a page view, or you have user engagement event or something that fires before the user clicks on that. No, do not track me. That you're not going to see Universal Analytics or G4, but Google will receive that information one way or the other.
Yeah.
So the approach that we come up with that is very simple. When it comes to the whole structure. What we did is that we proposed to the client, okay, so why don't you connect that consent mode, the click of a button, to a JavaScript function that would say, well, if a user says yes, you fire the tag manager snippet. If a user says no, I don't want that, do not fire the snippet. So we just went one step back and tried to block tag manager as a whole. Now, if you do that, keep in mind that you're really gonna block everything, because tag manager will not load. And this is one approach that we just proposed to them, like, okay, if you're concerned about data, concerned about your clients, the users, and everything else, that's a way. It's 100%. Either you block everything or you don't block anything.
Right. Yeah. And that's a pretty heavy-handed way to do it, right? I think anybody, though, would acknowledge you to be able to deal with this, there must be some tracking of information, if only to be tracking the fact that they asked not to be tracked. So it would be maybe like, texting somebody who you no longer want to have a relationship with and just say, don't contact me anymore.
Yeah, right.
Right. You have to say there has to be at least that point of time where that one message gets across, and that's going to be logged.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So one way or the other, and that's why we come up with that approach. So one way or another, something will slip through the cracks. And even if like using an example, even if you say like, well, okay, I don't want to be tracked anymore, don't do that. You still have the log. You still have the other things before you come to that point where no, don't do that anymore.
Sure. And I mean, the analog in things like email marketing would be the one click unsubscribed. There's still one click, and we had to note that click happened. So that's how you've mentioned snippet, and I want to jump into that a little bit more, because there are many kinds of snippets. There are even our hard tags, and in 2023, Google made I think a pretty sizable change to the way that their main tag snippet on our websites works. They've consolidated into one thing they call a Google tag, right? Can you tell us about that?
Right. Yes. So Google Tag was, something that they changed recently, or kind of recently. It's been there for a while now. But it's a way to consolidate that. The famous G4 configuration tag. So
Yes.
before we had the configuration tag, where you would have to go into that tag and you have to put all the parameters regarding to user or events and everything else. And so they just they removed the configuration, and now we have Google Tag if you go to Tag Manager. But attached to that one, not only they provided that new tag, but they also created, presented two other variables, which are the ones that hold the, settings event, parameters, event settings,
Yes.
and the configuration itself. So the configuration does not happen in the Google tag anymore, the G4 configuration tag that we had before, but now is in a variable where you can put the event parameters, or the ones that should be passed into all events, or you have the configuration, the ones that the parameters that should go into page views. So all of that.
Okay.
So that
Right.
yeah, there's a
I
lot
mean,
to explore here.
right. So if I may, I'm gonna try and break apart what you said there, because there's just so much. I can barely keep up. What you were saying about the Google tag, so that is the physical line of JavaScript that goes on, as you said correctly. It's been on our websites for some time. They were, I might even say it's a bit of a Trojan horse. They were putting it there as early as, when they first rolled out App plus Web Analytics, which became GA4. And that tag, they built it in a way such that the actual thing that the apparatus for tracking your site can be changed in soft code. So once that thing is on your site, it has basically the ability to make up tags. Now, they're not other pieces of JavaScript on your site, but they might as well be a tag, because when you open up Google Tag Manager, it says, voila, there's a new tag there. And so that's what you meant when you said they rolled us over after GA4 became the only solution we have. They migrated us all to this new Google Tag. And so now let's turn to that event configuration variable. All right. The Google Tag does many things. It can talk to not only Google Analytics 4, it can also talk to Google Ads, right?
That's right. Yes, you can connect that one. Once you send the data, to G4, you can, also send the data to other tools, inside the Google Marketing structure.
Yes, right.
And that's that's where all the the interesting things happen, because you have one funnel of information that you just send everything to one location, and that you spread everything into the rest of the web of tools that you have.
Right. So we're kind of, if I were to imagine this as being different levels at which we're working, let's put the lowest level actually putting physical snippets of JavaScript on our sites. We used to have a Google Ads snippet. We used to have, I remember, a Google Ads remarketing snippet. And we used to have of course, GA4, Google Analytics snippet. So those have been consolidated into one. And now it looks at each of those inside of this one big tag as just being different destinations. It's basically, you switch it on. Do you want to send it to, GA4? Do you want to send it to Google Ads? Where do you want to send it? We'll turn it on for you. Then with that comes an event configuration variable. Like you said, a pair of fields, one being the field that you want and what is the value of that field that you want. So tell us how those event configurations work.
The event configuration, yeah. So it's interesting. Before going to that one, interesting that you mentioned that when the consolidation of tags happened, before the advent of Google Tag Manager, you had a lot of code loading into your website, and among other things, site speed, like all the issues behind it. When you have to load all of that, sometimes something loads first instead of the other snippet. So yeah, Tag Manager just got that consolidation information, removed everything from the website, and put in the Tag Manager. Now, Tag Manager along the years started to evolve. Every time we see something new in there, we see a new tag, a new variable, whatever. And when we come to G4, the structure, because of the data model between UA and G4, quickly on that one. So the data model UA, we have category, action, labels, dimensions, and metrics. And the data model in G4, it's only events and parameters. Now, parameters could be separated into dimensions and metrics, but now everything is a parameter. Okay, so just an overview on that one. When we come to the events in Tag Manager, now we have the event tag, which will follow some parameters. But before that update that Google did with the Google tag, we had to configure all the parameters and fields to set or user parameters into each individual tag. So imagine that you have like 5 events. You have like login, click, footer click, or whatever, and you want the page, the location to be passed into all of those events. If you have 5 different tags, one for each event, now you have that location. You have to configure that location parameter in all of the tags. And that if you scale that one, if you have like a robust website with a lot of pages, a lot of different events, you can easily go to 50, 60 tags or even 100 tags or more. Now imagine you having to configure all of those tags one by one because I have to have location or page in all of them. It's Governance wise, it's pretty hard. You're going to have to track everything. You're going to waste a lot of time to do that. So that's where Google came up with this solution in terms of consolidation of information. And that's where they remove the configuration from the tags itself and put into the variable. It's pretty much similar to what we have in Universal Analytics. We have that the GA settings variable where we had the indexes and all the dimensions were going in there. You put the index, you put a dimension, and you just map that variable to the specific tag that you want. That's basically what happened for G4 now. Now you have this event parameter that that can be added into this variable, and now you
Right.
just need to map that variable because it's like a box full of information that you just
Yes.
put like the box. Okay, all this information is going here, going there, going there. You just have to map. It saves a
Just
lot
do
of
it
time.
once. Yeah.
Yes,
So, and for those who go into Google Tag Manager, they'll be familiar with this kind of dynamic variable whenever they see those pair of brackets inside of a field, right? It's like, don't use this actual hard coded value I'm giving you. Go ahead and grab it from this variable.
that's right. Yes, that's it's interesting because you have to keep an eye on those. Use as much as possible what Google Tag Manager provides you in terms of use defined variables or built-in variables. I got a lot of clients, and talking with people about this one, and they most of the time they just try to come to that one because Tag Manager allows you to put custom HTML and JavaScript code, and they just want to try to reinvent the wheel in that one. They're just like, oh, I want to grab the container ID, so I'm just gonna put like a custom JavaScript to grab that one. Well, it's already in there. It's already built
Right.
in. Don't know like those type of information. So you don't need
Right.
to go around and create something new just to grab that one. And some developers we kind of like to write the code because we know what is happening. It's our own code. We know how to structure that one if we want to escalate the code or make it better.
Yeah.
But important to think that every time that you add a custom JavaScript variable and every time that you add a custom HTML, it's that code. Remember that code that you mentioned before that we had all the snippets in the website and we moved to the tag manager to have
Hmm.
a single place. Adding custom HTML and JavaScript, variables is just going back to that location.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying use it only in the last case. If you really need to do something and you don't have developers, you don't have the data layer, it's urgent or whatever, and still short-term solution. Don't go crazy on those HTML tags or JavaScript because that will load into the website and the performance of the website can be impacted. I've seen clients with 30, 35 custom HTML tags and they were
Yeah.
complaining, whoa, my website's kind of slow, it really takes forever to load. And I went into the tag manager like, yeah, those 30, 35 tags in here pushing code to the website may be the reason. You have to
Yeah.
keep an eye on that.
No kidding. There's yeah. If you don't need that extra manual stuff, don't use it. I want to return for a second because I think there's a mental shift also. At least I've had to make a mental shift with understanding how this new tag has like a level of primacy that I haven't been used to. So if we did decide, Ricardo, to change, what destination we need or some of these other aspects, or just look up um, what the tag is, they've given us now a screen, and I believe it's in GA, and it's basically like a central storehouse for everything about the Google tag. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it even has its own ID.
The Google Tag, yes, that's how it's like a consolidation place, a single
Yeah,
place that you
right.
just you can track information. You can just see what is happening without really going into Tag Manager. It's like a
Yes.
one place stop that okay, let's have a look at that one, see what's happening, and it's good because it gives marketers and whoever like analysts to know what is happening on the other side without really needing to know like this new way of going to tag manager and knowing code or whatever.
Yeah, it's very handy from, let's say you're on the agency side, just to have that snapshot versus when I go into another person's GTM account, it, practically forensics. I have to actually step through and try to like a detective, figure out what they were trying to do. This is a pretty handy place where I can just size up what they have. Now, there might be more questions that come, but at least it's a starting point.
It is, yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because if there's any issues regarding on the tracking, or if you want to consolidate whatever is happening into that one, consolidate, combine with other tags, or just change the destination in terms of where the data is going from the tag manager, you can just see, into that one. It gives you, as you said, a starting point to investigate something with the developers. Just like instead of coming back to the developer and just say, hey, something's not working on my tracking, and the developers, okay, what specifically you're looking for? Because programming people are really, if you don't give those direct instructions, but with that one, you just like, you can say, hey, there's this ID, this tracking ID that's not receiving information, or this event, it's not the way it's supposed to be because I'm looking at my G4 interface. Can you check that one specifically? It saves a lot of time when it comes to asking for a solution.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we all need to just get in the habit of knowing what this new ID is. And, just like we have with measurement ID, we've just got to basically make sure that we look for it and log it. It does bring up the issue of those older physical snippets on our website, or even the ones like the Universal Analytics configuration tag that's sitting on our GTM. When do you think we should pause those or remove them? What's your advice?
Yeah. So I think you should be looking into what you're looking to track, the structure of your company and whatever you're looking to achieve when it comes to goals and tracking information. The one, of course, in G4 is really like a basic tracking, like an overall. When you move to the tag manager, it's a more robust type of tracking type of information. So I think that's definitely where you should analyze. Okay, let's look what we're looking for in here, what we want to accomplish in here, and then you decided where to go. If you're going to go with option A, option B, or maybe if you have like a really robust or something else, you can even think about a new tag manager system. It's really up to the objectives of the company.
You got it. All right. Well, we have dealt with many things on this side, but the entire context of what we've been talking about has been client side. And so we're going to jump around to another way of doing all of this. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. Stepping away for a second to ask you if following all this Google Tag business has you confused. If it is, don't worry. I wrote an explainer on the changes that have been happening with Google's Tag and the tools that interact with it. The tag can now do much more than it used to, but there are more ways that you can make mistakes with it. If you haven't been staying up with what Google's done over the last year or two, I've got a LinkedIn article that gives the main highlights and helps you know the right way to use it for getting your data tracked in GA or wherever else you're sending the data. You can get it by going to my LinkedIn profile. The link to it will also be in the show notes. And if you need assistance with your Google tagging, reach out to me. I'm here to help. Okay, let's get back to the show. So Ricardo, we're going to now flip to talking about server-side tag management. And this is something that, many people in analytics have been hearing about. Developers are quite comfortable with this concept, but I also know a lot of people, quite smart people, who are having trouble wrapping their heads around what server side brings to the table. Can you tell us what it does?
Yeah, sure. So, like the server side is definitely a new approach in terms of tracking the data. What I like to highlight in terms of the server side, it's mainly control of the data that you have that you're being tracking. So some people may say that, oh, it's an extra step that you just add into the whole process of tracking information. But think about when you have the client side container and loads information, and knows like developers out there and like marketers, if you go to the dev tools into Chrome or whatever tool you're using browser, you can see the hits going to the servers. Now, if you use the client side, those hits, they go to their destination automatically. You don't have control of what type of data they're going. You can't intercept that information. Of course, you can put parameters, metrics, and everything else. But once an event happens, it goes all the way. Now, when you go to the server side, that's where the beauty of the data control happens. Not only gives you an extra layer of security in terms of all the data tracking that's happening, but now gives you control over the what specific data you're been tracking and where that specific parameter, small details are going. Now, if you have the server side and data comes as a request, you have an HTTP request in that one, and it just sits there waiting for you. And that's the whole beauty of it. I like, the control over the data and where does it go. So, for example, I have a hit that comes from a website, and there's a specific parameters that I don't want to send to Meta or TikTok or whatever tool out there. You can just exclude that one from the hit and use the same line of funnel in here to send the data to that one. So GA, for example, will receive your page location, but TikTok or Meta won't receive that one, and that's where all the beauty. Different from when you add the snippet through the client side. Client side, you add the snippet, you would just grab the information and you would just send information directly to that third-party tool or to whatever you want to send the data.
Right. And you've said it beautifully. If I may, I'll just maybe add a bit of commentary, and this will be a little less on the technical side of the explanation. So when we're looking, if we think about how websites actually work, there is a server. Well, there are several servers involved, and there always have been. We just don't see them. We have the server where our web pages reside. And so, as you say, if we had a meta tag or a TikTok tag or a LinkedIn tag, any of those other ones, if we are doing client-side tag management, meaning we're basically letting everything in and it's touching that page that resides on our host server, then yeah, everything that is coming through is going back out to all of those parties wherever the request for that page reads the page, right? So it's the whole page gets read and the whole page gets sent to all of the places where those companies have put the tags. So this in this scenario, we have basically a server before we reach the website host server. And that server is, let's call it a tag server. But if people want to think about it as a firewall server, or if they want to think about it as a traffic load balancing server, you can think of it any way you want. But it's a step prior, and it is now siphoning what is going to the host, grabbing the information, and then, as you say, we now have granular control of what can go where. And so we're able to, instead of having everything or nothing, we can have something, but also some things will not get sent to destinations because we've got that extra server that's kind of our first line of defense stopping there.
Right. And that's where comes your control over it. Although, it's a server, from that we use Google's, computation to get that one, you're still in control of those hits of whatever, data is coming through, because it will wait for your, you can say, you wait for your command to know where the data, should go. So it's definitely an extra, control over that.
Now, how much work do we have to do to get that kind of control?
Yeah, there are a couple of good sides and bad sides in terms of that one. Of course, like creating a Google server, a Google Tag Manager. Like a new container, you would have to go into Google Tag Manager itself. You create a container like a server side. You have that option over there. Once you do that, you also have to get a billing account into Google Cloud, because again, it's a server side and you're going to use the computation in terms of Google hardware structure and everything else. Once you have that one, then you need to go back into your client side and then deal with all the configuration. So the configuration on the client side is not anything out of this world. You just have to get your tags to send the data to your server container. And
Right.
inside the server container, it's where the magic happens. You create clients. But so when you look at the server container, there are, I think it's two options, two extra options that you can have in that one, which is the client one, and you also have some templates that, although you have on the client side, it's a whole new different structure of templates that you're gonna have, but you create a client on the like on the server side that will grab that information, that request that you sent from your client side, and that request will be transformed into a data model or into readable way to send the data. So it just transforms into an event name, parameters. It just break down that into a data object where it can be used by G4 clients or any other vendors, if you may think about that.
Yeah, and so when we have that kind of control, are there some use cases that you can think of that make this a very appetizing way to go for certain companies, either as, giving them a better way to do their marketing, or even out of interest of abiding by privacy regulations, and being aware of what may need to happen in jurisdictions like the EU. What do you see as being the best uses for server side in either of those?
Yeah, the server side comes as a really handy in terms of privacy, in terms of data collection, also in terms of ad blockers as well. So up to now, I mean, we don't know if the ad blocks are going to keep it up with everything that's been happening, but up to now, it is a good way to go around that one. Is not 100% solution, but it is a good way to deal with all the situation. Third-party tags. It's also something really interesting as well, because when we go with the client side, everything that is not does not come from the server itself that loads the website, it's considered like a third party. So you have the Meta, you have TikTok, you have Snapchat, all those snippets you put in the website through the client side tag manager, it's considered a third party. And we
Yes.
have been seeing browsers that are blocking that, and we know that next year Google is like releasing probably 1% of their browser Chrome will start blocking that one for the sake of testing and everything else.
Yep.
So we are already leaving this blocking situation, and like server side comes to remove that third party load and just put into the server itself. Because
Okay. This is a huge point. So
yeah,
take your time on this one. What do you mean by it takes those third party ones and turns them into something that is yours?
right. Yeah. So when we look at the server side itself, so everything that we get load from the server side is basically it's basically considered a first party one, because it comes from your own server. It is not it's not different from if you
Yep.
load something directly into your website or from the server where the website is hosted. Anything
Right.
that does not come from the website that is hosted, that from that server, it's considered like a third party because it does not came
Okay.
from that
So
location.
so the perspective here is from the point of view of the browser on the user's machine. They're looking at whatever you're sending, and what's going back and forth, and they're seeing it all as first party. So you're saying it won't trigger their lockdown on things that seem to be coming from third parties that are piggybacking through your site.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Although, and this may be me just, stabbing myself on the back. It's interesting because I was like, following those discussions in terms of, tracking everything else and the third party server side.
Yeah.
And I saw an interesting point that someone said that the IP range, which is, your address in that one, the IP range of Google Cloud provides you may be different from the IP range that
Oh,
of that
right.
third party vendor, even though you're loading that from your own server on the server side.
So I'm of two minds on this, right? I mean, we're all web users as well as being marketers, but I think the point here is we're not guaranteed that this is a way around third party cookie deprecation. But I do think that if we use this wisely and not just indiscriminately, we may be able to, have this work at least for some time. Um, I do think, though, if many marketers abuse it and simply use this to do an end run around what the browsers are trying to do with restricting third-party cookies, things like those IP addresses will be used to hammer us. And then we'll be right back where we started with losing this visibility, and we won't have any other way to get it.
That's right. That's right. So it's an interesting point, because every time that we have a new rule or a new structure for something, is because a few people use that the wrong way,
Yeah.
and now we have rules to to get that one. But it's a good point. If we know how to use that, and even if we try to like I like to say that if we try to focus a little bit more into our own like website, our own house, like the website that you have your e-commerce and everything else, instead of trying to follow users around. It's like I like to say that it feels like when you go shopping, go to a shopping mall and you go into a store and you look around, you browse a couple things, and you leave the store. Imagine that you have someone from that store following you around.
Yeah.
That's where because maybe okay, one person just to see where you're going, what you like, and everything else. But eventually, marketers, as you said, they start to abusing this one, and now we have like 3, 4, 5 people following you around, and then like okay, no more following people around. Now we're gonna have to focus on only what we have directly, into the website. And I like to say that because it's a way that instead of us trying to following people around where they're going, why don't we look into our own store, our own website, and try to make it better so we can get the users in there? It's like a way of shifting where you're working. Oh, I'm not focusing on following whatever is happening outside my store or outside my website, but now focusing on how can I make my website better using the events and all the information that I have in here. So
Yeah.
although
Yeah.
it is a problem when it comes to like remarketing and in terms of audience and everything else, you definitely have to work around that one. I think one approach would be to get more logins, get people to log in, maybe complete a profile, maybe to understand where they start, log in, what they're doing. So you can have user ID and everything else in that one. Although some people may say that that's still a problem in terms of PII or tracking issues. There's a whole discussion of that one on the internet, but it is a way to understand better what's happening. And once people leave my website, leave my store, I already have the information. Now I have to look at what I have in here. I just like, okay, the person like left my website, left my store. Let's look of what I collect and let's make changes on website, upgrades, make my website better based on what we have.
Right. You said the magic word there, change. So we need to be regularly looking at the experience we're providing. If we can justify doing things like asking them to create a profile and then having a logged in session, if we see the numbers in our analytics that support them wanting this and using what we're providing, if they're engaging, then that's fine. But we need to leave behind us those days of data is just going to be something that I track everything I can just because I can.
That's right.
We instead need to go by, okay, what is the need? I think it frankly is an acknowledgement by us that data has value. And customers have for a very long time known that they are giving us data. They have seen where we have betrayed them with that data. And now they're saying to us, okay, prove to me why I should let you have it. And we have to, they see the value, we should see the value. Um, to go even farther, we are spending money inside of our companies with agencies or with in-house teams that are keeping this data clean and analyzing it. So if we can't justify why we are going through that expense for the data, we should get rid of that data. And frankly, it'll make us leaner and meaner, right?
Right, yeah, that's a really good point. I've seen companies that just want to track everything that's happening, and then they just say, okay, once we have everything, maybe someone would need that one, maybe another department, or we just track because we can. And it may be something that we were doing in the past, and it was between quotes like working, and everybody was happy with that one. But then, as you said, now users, clients start asking, okay, why are you tracking that one? Why this one is important? And because of all this I want to track everything because I can, kind of scare, the market, the users and everybody else. And if you think about it in one way, tracking everything that you can not only scares your users away, your clients, but also increases the amount of data that you collect. And now you have to have like a huge team that's just looking at the data and sometimes not even getting anything out of that data.
Right.
They just track, oh, we have like this small click button on one page specifically. We track that one, but we don't know why we're going to use that. Why we're using that? Why do we want to track? No. So I've heard from clients just saying like, oh yeah, we track because we can. I've heard that, well, we track just to make sure in case another department or someone would ask about that one. And then they spend like 6 months, a year tracking that stuff and no one asked about that. And I also seen that some tracking, some revamp that we did in terms of tracking data. We talked with the client like, hey, there's this specific parameter event happening this page. Why are you tracking that? And they just, I don't know. I don't remember. It was someone in the past and we just forgot about it. So,
Well, yeah, and there's two levels at this to look at, and I really appreciate how you've brought it back. We may sometimes not know because it wasn't well documented. So, down at that granular level, shame on us for not following a best practice of documenting. But at a higher level, we shouldn't. It applies to analytics. It applies to anything in business. We shouldn't do something if we didn't have a strategy for why we were doing it. So I guess this brings us, basically to understanding what we want to track and how we're going to, for our own organization, make a data model that supports that. And it's not, like you said, let's track everything. That's not the answer. The answer is to rigorously go around, ask departments, find people, go up to leadership and see what is needed, and then build your data structure around that.
Yeah, and you may have to rethink, if you go to the departments and you ask people that deals with the marketing or look at the reports and they can't answer you those questions, why do you want that, or what do you want to track, or what's important to you? Well, then you may have to rethink about the whole structure and everything else, because if they don't know what they want to track or what is happening, what something is important to them, that can be a red flag in so many levels. So
yeah, right. Yeah. Now you've got the benefit though. You are with an agency and you see many, many different implementations. So I suppose one of the good things there is, you are familiar with what the best practices are, and this information is shared by people like you on the internet, so that other people, if they go and look for it, will be able to find out how to fix those internal problems. If your organization is dysfunctional from a data management standpoint, don't worry, you're not alone, but you need to seek out people like Ricardo and others who share information about how we can all get better. So, Ricardo, if people want to find out more about the stuff that you talk about or about the agency that you work at, where would you send them?
You can definitely go to my LinkedIn. I'd be more than happy, to try to help as much as possible people in that one. You can add me, if that's the case. We can, exchange some ideas. You could also find me on Facebook. Interesting enough, if you think about, Facebook, people just look at that as a social media. There's a lot of good groups in terms of analytics, G4, the UA, tag manager, and everything else, with a lot of smart people there as well. I am in most of those groups. I try to reply as much as possible. And yeah, but mainly, if you look at, LinkedIn, you can find me. It's easy. I think I'm the only Ricardo Cristofolini in there. I hope so. You may find others, but yeah, you can't miss me.
We'll have a link to it in the show notes. And Ricardo, thanks so much for coming on today.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. Really nice to talk with you, Glenn.
Likewise, thank you so much for giving us a way to track our funnel and give us insights that make it even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.